Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott Tilford.
Hello, Josh Brown. Now, we did a news a good few weeks ago, time as a flat circle. Could have been back in March, to be honest, but we did do a bit of news on the state of PlayStation VR. The idea that, Jim Ryan was out there saying, look, man, there's nothing happening for another couple of years. For the love of God, will you just leave us alone? And we put that out, and we sort of thought that, by the sounds of it, Sony were pretty much abandoning PSVR. However, it seems that the complete opposite is now the case.
Potentially. They're at least, flirting around with its future. Let's Go Digital, who actually picked up the original patent for the dev kit of the PlayStation 5. Remember that kind of jetpack looking thing, and did a render for that.
Yes.
They've picked up another patent about a potential PlayStation VR 2 that has been signed by Sony. They've also done a digital render of what that might look like, which we may be able to throw up on the screen. And essentially, it just kind of confirms that Sony are throwing around ideas for a new version of the headset that will be PlayStation 5 compatible. It looks more or less the same, maybe a bit streamlined with a fewer wires, but ultimately the main features that were kind of like discussed and reported to be associated with it are the new haptic feedback receptors in the face mask itself. It's got sensors on the side that detects whether or not it's actually on your head properly, which I know is a big thing for a lot of people, because the original PlayStation VR, you have to mess about with that so much. Like, my mother could never get that on her head to save her life. Those are the two main ones. They've got LED lights, which are kind of cool, I guess, but essentially it just sort of confirms that they are actively working towards a new version of the headset, despite what Jim Ryan might said. I do have another quote from another Sony executive to get to, but Scott Tilford, are you looking forward to a PlayStation VR 2 at all?
So for me, there's there's two things here, like the mention of the LED lights thing. I wonder if that means that they're still going to go with light tracking for the actual motion control, tracking side of it. Because compared to the Vive or the Oculus and stuff, I know that the PSVR going down, having multiple lights on the front of the headset and then having a camera track them was in the VR space. If you're a proper VR fan, that's one of the cheaper ways to do motion recognition on behalf of a system. And I had mixed results with that. It's not that for the most part, the headset was pretty much one-to-one, but I did lose the controllers quite a lot. And I know that they had more than just the lights, but overall, I would want I'd want a way more refined sense of it, knowing exactly where I am. Playing some stuff like Super Heart or Blood and Truth. Any game where you have to sort of lean around, lean down and pick different things up when you're in the middle of a frantic action sequence or something. That just lost the tracking for me on the Move controllers, and it would just float away out of my view when I was trying to play. So things like that. And the haptic stuff, that kind of remains to be seen whether that's a long-term thing for me. Because I think the more that I play PS5 games that have heavy haptic stuff, where the triggers are fighting me left, right, and center, after a while I just want to play the game and I don't want to fight the controller to fire a gun. And I kind of wonder if they would, I guess, coupled with VR, with the sort of sensory overload that you would get, where they're just comprising your entire vision, taking up one of your senses, and then you sort of factor in difference in haptic controllers, that might just be way more effective than, the shape of a DualSense. At some point, I can't get away from the fact that it's a controller vibrating with pressurized triggers, as opposed to I'm climbing a mountain or whatever when you're in VR.
I'm conflicted, right? Because I do sort of agree with you, and I have turned off the haptics and stuff like that in Call of Duty Cold War's multiplayer, because I feel like it's an extra thing to learn, and it's sort of impacting my ability in that game. But overall, I do think it's really good for immersion. I was playing Demon's Souls again last night, and the implementation of the haptics in that game is much subtler than it is in something like Astro Bot. You can feel when you turn the I don't know what you call it, a wheel to get a lift or an elevator back up. You can feel the vibration moving from one side to another. And I do think it is really immersive. So the idea of having that integrated into VR, for me, sounds awesome, because I think the 3D audio already does so much to invest you into whatever world you're jumping into. Whether or not I want it on me head is something different. I don't know if I want it pressed against my skull. That, you said, remains to be seen. But I do also agree that, for me, I love PlayStation VR, but the biggest drawback is those Move controllers, because they're not really fit for purpose. Like, they're functional, but you can tell they weren't designed for the PlayStation VR like solely. You can tell that they were retrofitted from previous tech just to get them to work, and they're fine. But like you said, like, they do lose tracking quite often. It's really easy to go out of bounds. It's really kind of frustrating in games where you have to reach for something and you're wrestling with it and stuff like that. Fortunately, there have been patents in the past suggesting that Sony are looking into dedicated PlayStation controllers for the VR, which would be welcome. And I think like that combined with a new headset would be enough for me personally to invest in a next-gen version, especially because like VR at the moment is just being forgotten about more or less by Sony. It's kind of been an obligation, like a frustrated obligation for them to accept that it still exists and for them to port it over to PlayStation 5. Because currently it's like, if you want to play a PlayStation VR on the PlayStation 5, you can only play it on the PS4 versions of video games. So Hitman 3 is coming out in January. With a cable that you need to
separately get from them.
Yes, yeah, with a cable adapter you need for the camera and stuff. But, you know, Hitman 3 is coming out in January, and you can buy that for PlayStation 5, but you'll need to download the backwards compatible PlayStation 4 version if you want to play it via PlayStation VR on your headset. It's just like mad stuff like that they haven't seemed to account for. And that combined with Jim Ryan, like you said, we did the news where he was talking about the VR in general not necessarily being an integral part of the gaming experience right now, but it might be in 2 years or so. To me, points towards this being quite a ways off. I do have another small tidbit that was picked up by Nibble. Is it Nibble? I always say Nibble, Nibble,
I'm gonna go with
Nibellion on Twitter. I've only ever heard it written down.
Yeah, we've never said his name before. It's definitely Nibellion's definitely the full name. I mean, Nibble sounds better than Nibble, but
Nibble. I'm going to go with that for now. I'm so sorry. But like again, it's when you see things written down, you never ever question it. But yeah, this was picked up by them. This was a translated Japanese Sony interview with an executive called Hideaki Nishino, who said, quote, "I would like to expect the PS5 to have a VR experience that is appropriate for the PS5. I can't comment any further, but I'm looking forward to it." And then they laughed. So to me, that kind of does obviously suggest that they're working on something, despite what Jim Ryan has said. This patent seems to back it up. And even though they might have abandoned it right now, Scott Tilford, hopefully within a few years we get a proper re-embracement of the tech, because some of my favorite games of like the entire generation have come from VR. Some of my favorite games of this year have come from VR. And I don't want them to kind of lose the momentum that they've had so far.
The thing that fascinates me with VR is like I want to, because for me there's like really specific nuanced factors that put me off VR. Like I got PSVR, like I love No Man's Sky in VR, and I played a handful of other sort of games, and I don't know, I don't like the isolating factor of it. I don't like putting a headset on that isolates me from the world. The idea that someone could have broke into my house and be standing right behind me and I'd have no idea, I've got no way of knowing. That's one thing, that's a very nuanced, very specific thing. But I don't like that isolating side of it. I think the setup is a massive factor. Obviously on the PSVR, there's like the little breakout box and you've got to connect, you've got to get in between your HDMIs and there's just cables galore. I think if they streamline that stuff, maybe they give it like the Vive style, like an in-headset camera where you can still look around and see what's around you, with like the push of a button, so you're not feeling as completely locked into this experience. If you want to sort of just be sure of like your surroundings and stuff, there's probably a path for it. I think the biggest problem with it is marketing, because all of the VR, at every turn, it was like, well, we can't, you have to experience it for yourself. Get yourself down to a local game store and try one out and make sure that, you know, like, there's just no way to actually market this stuff, like, other than just saying, like, trust us, it's worth it. And then the price tag being alongside it. I don't know, like, we really went for VR the last few years, like, more than we've ever had in the gaming history. And I feel like the mass populace said no. But I think that obviously VR has its followers, and, like, you know, VR community, it's great. Like, it's taken off more than ever. But not in a way, for me, that I feel like is viable for like a mainstream system to continue with. And I don't know, I'm just curious. I feel like they've patented something that they could potentially do, but I just don't. It just so didn't land this time, and I really feel like they went for it.
I know what you mean, yeah, and it is sort of, you know, I think we are quite lucky in a way that Sony supported the PSVR as much as they did, judging on their history of releasing things outside of the main consoles and then just forgetting they exist, like the PlayStation Vita. But I don't know, like, I'm not holding out like a load of hope that it's going to be as mainstream and as accessible and as sort of pushed as I want it to be, but at the same time, like, I've enjoyed the experience way too much, and they've come so far from the very early days of PlayStation VR and those early PlayStation VR experiences that I do think like there's something special to come. Like we didn't get it on PlayStation VR, but Half-Life Alyx this year, everyone who's played that game just says it's like the next big thing in gaming, and it's like we could get to that point. We could, Jim Ryan, come on, my man, come out for a pint with me, and I'll just get you like absolutely wasted, and I'll just convince you to greenlight this patent and convince you to make it, and then give me one for free, but then sell it to everyone else, and I'll spread the word. This is not a bribe. I'm not bribing you right now if you're watching this.
Geordie Jim, I mean, look, at some point, I want him to at least give it another chance. I just don't, like, because the technology, like you said, the technology is great when it works. There's just a lot of limitations, the things that I mentioned, plus the space allocation you have to have, the amount of just, you need a big old space to be able to walk around in a virtual environment. I think a lot of people don't have that. It's a fascinating, like, next step for gaming. That, like I said, I'm just curious. I guess let us know what you think down in the comments below. Like, did you invest in VR? Do you see it being something that the mainstream console, race could embrace? Like the site, like both PlayStation and Xbox. Like Nintendo did a cardboard version of it. Whether Sony and Microsoft would embrace it going forward. For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
See you later.